Hello and welcome back. So right now you've just successfully installed Eclipse, or if you're using a computer in the lab, you've set up Eclipse the base way, so that way you can access things. What we're going to talk about now is doing a basic overview of Eclipse. So you should see a screen like this. It's possible if you have an older version of Eclipse installed, you might not see something exactly like this, but you should see something very similar. The main thing you're going to see regardless is you want to click on the workbench icon. This only appears the first time you're here, and the workbench icon has been the same for years. It might be hidden on the screen elsewhere if you're using a different version. Anyway, so let's click on it. So what we have now is our basic Eclipse window. We don't have anything in here because we haven't done anything with Eclipse. The main thing you're going to care about for the most part of this class is going to be this main window, and this will be where your code will live. You're also going to see on the left, which will eventually be your list of files, and on the bottom, very shortly over here, will be the output of your programs. This right window we never use. You can use it for more advanced things, but we never need it. So with that in mind, we're going to go and first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new Java project. So I'm going to create my new Java project, and it should pop up a window, and I am going to choose lab. I always want to make sure to name my project something very specific, and the reason why I harp on this is because if you name your project something different, it becomes really annoying for me to see it, because all your projects get sorted by file name. So I'm going to really harp on this. So this is the 0 with lab, because in computer science we always start with 0. And because we're probably going to have 10 labs in here, I'm going to leave an extra space for it. So it's lab-00-A block. And I'm using A block because that's my network ID. If there's something else, then that's what I would end up using. Anyways, everything else on here we accept as the default, and then we click Finish. And we'll see a project over here, lab00A block, and this is the list of all the files in here. The SRC is the main thing we're going to care about. But before we actually start building a project, the first thing we need to do is we need to download this file that I've created called magic.java. Magic.java includes a lot of the files that you'll need to sort of make things work on a regular basis. We're going to stop using it as the semester goes on, but it makes the first part of this class much, much, much easier than having to explain how Java really does everything. So anyways, what I want you to do is I want you to go to Moodle, and you should see 14 CS110, an Introduction to Computer Science. And in here, you should see more populated. I'm just starting preparing the class right now. And so you'll see a whole bunch of things in here that will be for every class. Oops, made a mistake. Okay, we're back anyways. So what I want you to do is I want you to click on magic.java. Now I want you to left click on this. If you right click on it and try and download it, you'll actually mess things up because Moodle is kind of annoying. So we'll left click on this and it'll load the file magic.java. Now what I need you to do is go to File, Save As, and then we want to save magic.java. And we want to make sure, if we're using this in Safari, to save it as page source. And it should say magic.java at the top. It's very important that say .java. So we hit save, and I do not want to append this. And then we will see the file here. If we're using a Mac, it'll look very nice. It should look something like this, where it actually appears, see the name Java on it, or magic.java. That's what we want. Unfortunately, Moodle views this as a text file and messes it all up because it's, again, annoying. We're going to go back because we're going to come back to Moodle in a few minutes. So what I want you to do now is I want you to take your magic.java file and drag it into the SRC folder. We want to copy the files and we want to hit OK. If we click on the arrow, we'll see expansion, default package, magic.java. We can double click on it. We don't worry that it seems really odd. It's in there. It looks like it's working, and we can close it. So the next thing we want to do is we want to make our basic file that's called a Hello World project. So we want to go to File, New, Class. Almost everything in Java lives in what's called a class file. We'll talk about some of these interfaces, enums, as the semester goes on, but for right now, you want to make sure to live in a class file. So we're going to create a class file, and a lot of this is gibberish. You won't need to care about that. The main thing you're going to care about here is the name. And what we want to call this name is we're going to call it starter. Now you can call it main, whatever. I'm going to call it starter because I like it. Now what's also going to be very important is that you click this box, public static void main string args. It's going to generate some code for you that's going to make your life a little bit easier. If you miss it, it's not a big deal, but generally you're going to end up clicking this for a very long time. So we check that box and then we hit finish. Okay, so now we're in here. Now what we see is the basic program that we can run. What we see in here is a comment that we've talked about in class, and remember everything that's followed by a / is ignored, so I could type whatever I want to in here and the computer doesn't care. Blah, blah, blah. The important part of what I want to do is I want to do my very first project, which is I want to print out hello world. And the way I do that is I type magic.println quotes hello world. Now this is a very basic program, and again we see this magic here, and that comes from the magic file that I've given you. So magic.println hello world, I press play, which is the button up there. We want to save everything, because I haven't saved everything, and I hit OK. And we see at the bottom it prints hello world. One thing that you might have noticed, if you want to make sure before you hit the play button, and I should have mentioned this earlier, is that your starter is highlighted. If magic.java is highlighted and you press play, you might see hello world, you might see something different. It's very important that starter be there. You can also right click on starter and do run as Java application, and then it runs as well. Anyways, so this is hello world. What we can now do is we can do some of the concepts we learned in class. We can create a variable, int a, and I will set that equal to the value of 100, and I can print out the value of a. I run it, I press play, and you see hello world and 100. I can also do additional things. I will now ask the user for input, int a user value equals magic.nextInt, magic.println, please the value you entered is plus user value, spelled correctly, and this is string concatenation that we're talking about. I run it, save, hello world. It looks like it's paused here. It actually hasn't paused. What's happening right now is it's waiting for the user to enter a value. It doesn't prompt you because you haven't told it to be prompted. But if we entered a value here, an integer value, and I'll enter 42, and it'll print off 42. Notice that there's a green text here. That's the value that you entered. So let's make this program a little bit better and make it so it actually prompts the user before you start waiting for data. Magic.println, please enter a value, value spelled correctly, semicolon. Again, every line must end in a semicolon, otherwise it's gonna mess up. We press play, please enter a value. Ah, that's looking much better. And now I'll enter 42 again, and it says the value you entered is 42. A few things to note. Notice that there's a public class starter here. Don't worry about that. The important thing is that there's a curly brace there that ends there. That's fine. There's also this public static void main string blocks curly brace. This is what was auto-generated for you when you click that box. And so that's if you don't type it, you can actually type that back up. What's important here is there's a curly brace there, and the name match that exactly. If you did click the box, don't mess with the name. If you try and change it to anything else, your program actually won't work. For right now, all of the programs you're going to write have to live within the curly braces associated with this public static void main string args. This is where Java starts programs, and eventually we'll get to places where you can branch out of that, but that's where everything starts. Okay, so I have additional directions for you online, and you'll look at the sheet that I give you about other things I want you to do. Again, this is lab 0, so the directions here are going to be much simpler, but going forward it's going to be a lot more complicated. So after we have done all of our directions, again, finish the project that I give you, Okay, we're back. Sorry about that again. So I want to right-click on Lab00A block, and then I want to hit Export, and then I want to hit Archive File. I want to make sure everything here is checked, and now it should be checked if the top one is checked, but don't touch anything. The next thing I want you to do, save in zip format, and hit Browse. Now, it's going to be important here you actually choose the star.star. There's a bug in Eclipse where it seems like it doesn't work properly if you don't do it. Anyways, get to some directory where you want to save this. I'm going to save this in my class file. It can be wherever you want if you prefer saving it on your desktop, because this is going to be the thing that you'll eventually upload to me. And so I will name this file lab00ablock.zip, again, matching the same name that my project had. I'll hit save. Everything looks good there. I hit finish. Now I go over to my folder where I saved it, and we see lab00A block. Now what I want to do is I want to go to Moodle and click on lab0 upload. And Moodle will eventually load. I want to now add my submission, and it'll eventually load. So now I drag my zip file, lab00A block, there. Loading. Uploading the file. Again, Moodle's going really slow. Don't know why. There you go. Now you'll see it there, and then you hit Save Changes. And then eventually it stops, and you're done. And it is now added for grading, and it is now it's done. So that's how you create a project and then submit it. All right, see you next time.